Are you thinking about bringing a claim to the Workplace Relations Commission, an employment-related claim, and wondering about the value of having a legal representation? If you are wondering about that, and if you are thinking about bringing a claim, this video will give you some food for thought. In the last 18 months, I've come across two situations which worked out very, very well for me, fortuitously, very fortuitously. The first situation involved a situation of constructive dismissal where the young man left his job and felt he had no choice but to leave his job because of the conduct of his employer. He did leave his job and he brought a claim for constructive dismissal, and his employer engaged my services to help him. When I looked at the case, it was fairly clear excuse me, that we were going to have a hard time defending this case, because in all the circumstances it did look like a situation where the employee would have a very, very good chance of winning. We went along then on that basis to either the Workplace Relations Commission or the Employment Appeals Tribunal, and we were very much minded to try to settle the case, because it would have been, quite frankly, a good result if we did. Before we went, we calculated that if he won the case, his financial loss would probably be in the region of 25,000, because we calculated the amount of time that he'd been out of work and his loss of salary. Once we did that, then that's the least that he's entitled to if he wins his case, but we did think he had a good old chance of winning his case. So on that basis, we were looking at, I think it was 25 grand. We approached then the other side before the hearing with a view to trying to settle, and we asked him what was his financial loss, and he calculated that his financial loss was 25,000, but he then went ahead and subtracted from that the amount of money that he had received from social welfare by way of job seekers allowance and some other benefit that he received, and he knocked 10 grand off what he considered to be his financial loss. In other words, the amount that he was seeking was incorrectly calculated and was 10 grand less than it should have been. Well, quite frankly, we couldn't write the cheque quick enough to settle the case, because we were concerned not only would he win the 25 grand, but that the circumstances of the case were such that he could get a fair degree of sympathy from either the adjudicator or the Employment Appeals Tribunal, and would be possibly able to get more than his pure financial loss. But this was a case where there was a very simple mistake made. The amount of social welfare that the chap had received since he was out of work was deducted off what they were looking for. That was a mistake. The second situation involved an employee who brought a number of claims. Again, I happened to be on this situation on the side of the employer. The employee brought a number of claims under various heads, like not getting rest breaks, not getting paid minimum wage, being expected to work excessive hours, and a couple of other bits and pieces, perhaps holiday pay and so on. We suspected that her claim was out of time. In other words, it was outside the 6 months that was provided for all of these claims. But we were afraid as well that maybe she wasn't out of time, maybe she could make an argument to have the time extended from 6 months to 12 months, because if there is exceptional circumstances, the Workplace Relations Commission or the Employment Appeals Tribunal has jurisdiction to extend the time to 12 months if there are exceptional circumstances, and that is key. We made a small offer before the hearing with a view to settling it, but this wasn't accepted. We then went along to the hearing, and before the thing started at all, the adjudicator or rights commissioner decided there and then that he or she could not hear the case because it was out of time, it was outside the 6 months. we were expecting then that an argument would be made to have the time extended from 6 months to 12 months. However, that argument, that submission was never made, and consequently the case was just thrown out on the basis that the adjudicator or rights commissioner simply did not have the jurisdiction to hear the case. So there are two situations where I was involved in the last 18 months. In both situations I represented the employer. In both situations we were very lucky, and in both situations the tactic or tack taken by the other side was not an approach that would have been taken if a solicitor or a legal professional with a good degree of employment law experience would have taken. And both of these situations, clearly it gives you food for thought, because you can shoot yourself in the foot if you don't get legal representation or at least professional advice to ensure that your case is properly put forward and that you're not going to fall foul of any legislative requirement, or you're outside the time limit, or you make a miscalculation, as we've discussed in relation to the actual loss.